Welcome everybody that came along to this information evening. My name is Barry Hines. I'm acting deputy principal in School Louth, Tullydonal, and I'm going to introduce to get on with our proceedings. I'm going to ask, yes, and so anybody watching online, we do apologise. We're having some uploading issues with broadband speed, so we're looking at that now currently. Yes, it's been recorded, so when the meeting's over, you'll be able to view it in more comfort and pleasure. I'm going to hand you now over to Chairman of the Board of Management, Seamus Finnegan. Give you a round of applause, please. Thank you.
Tell me what to do now. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you're all very welcome to tonight's gathering. It's great to see such a crowd out on a bad night like tonight. I just want to tell you about the running order for the meeting tonight. And we're all here around the whole idea of, as is stated very clearly at the beginning of your booklet there, what we need to do in order for an inclusion model to work to serve the best interests of all our children. So we have a number of speakers here tonight who will speak to that theme. First of all, it'll be Anne-Marie, and then Paula Butterley will talk about some of the legislative aspects of the what we need to do. Colin Markey, MEP, will be joining us by video link, I hope. We have Damien Connolly, who is a trained psychologist who has experience working with the HSE and a lot of experience working with children with special needs. We then have Paul McCooey, who will speak from the perspective of a parent, followed by Evine Matthews, who is a qualified doctor but also a parent of a child in the school, and she will talk about her own experiences and perspectives as a parent. We then have Paul Savage, who is a secondary school principal, because a key aspect of what we're about here tonight is to try and ensure that there's a smooth transition from primary to second level, and then even beyond, as to what will happen and what will best serve the children when they leave the education system at the end of second level, and hopefully maybe go on to third level or go into some sort of work setting. We will finally have Liam Doran, who is the community representative on the Board of Management in Tullydonal School, and he will give us some guidelines as to how we can actually make things begin to happen in terms of amending or changing the legislation or making sure that the current Act does what it's supposed to do. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Anne-Marie. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Seamus. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our meeting here tonight, and thank you very much for coming out to hear what we have to say. So, my name is Anne-Marie Ford. I'm Principal of Scullnave Columkill in Tullydonal in Toher. We have invited everybody here tonight to offer some insight and information regarding the review of the EPSEN Act, which is currently taking place. So I suppose some of you might be asking, what is the EPSEN Act? And I've never heard of the EPSEN Act before. So tonight is about, letting everybody know what the EPSEN Act is about, and so you'll have a greater understanding of how this is related to your child or to children in general who have additional needs. So. The EPSEN Act will be discussed in further detail, as Seamus said, by Councillor Paula Butterley, who's also a barrister. Colin Markey will be joining us from Brussels, and Damien will be with us online as well. Damien Connolly, clinical psychologist, and hopefully Paul Savage will be here shortly, giving us the insight from the secondary school perspective, and then Liam will be finishing up. I suppose the EPSEN Act is based on an ideology. So an idea of inclusion. And its policy sets out to provide equal rights to the student with additional needs. So whether that might be on a physical or on a psychological level, to allow them to access education in the same way as their peers that have no additional needs. The aim of this Act is that the policy should be implemented in line with best international practice and with the intention that students with additional needs would be afforded the assistance to leave school with the skills necessary to participate the level of their capacity in the social and economic activities of society and to live independent and fulfilled lives. And this is what we wish for all our children. So, I want to just to hone in there on their capacity in social and economic activities in society and to live independent lives. That's what we all want for all our children, to be social, to be able to socially integrate and to be able to live independent lives. And that's what we're striving towards. And so I really want you to keep that in mind in terms of the idea of inclusion and how we include everybody, and how, I suppose, in school, the classroom is a smaller version of what society should look like. So we need to make sure that the classroom is reflecting what society looks like at the minute. And if it's not reflecting that, then we need to pause, we need to reflect, and we need to review what we're doing. Okay? So this all sounds very good in theory. However, the policy that sets out these objectives has fallen short in delivery. This was clearly evidenced last year in our school, when being fully invested in the ideology of inclusion, we learned that we had to fight, and fight very, very hard, to get the resources needed in order for 3 little children with additional needs to be included in mainstream. So we have 4 early intervention classes in our school for children with a diagnosis of autism. And the strategies were put in place. The work was done. We were delighted with the outcome when these children were like, the parents would have said, I can't believe they've done so well. I can't believe they're at the stage they're at, and that there's a possibility they're going to go to mainstream school. So we were all delighted, and it was a real success story and the whole lot. And then we went to integrate them, and I applied for resources to help them, as in human resources, S&A support. And when I put in the application, it came back no. And I thought, how can that be? That doesn't make sense. Sure, the EPSEN Act is there, the ideology is there. It's supposed to be about inclusion. We're doing that. We're including these children. And what you're saying, no. That doesn't make sense. To the point that these parents actually said to themselves, well, hang on, I don't know then if it's the best idea, for them to go to mainstream. Maybe they should be in an ASD class where they will get the support. But you see, the downside of that is, if they're going to go into an ASD class, the ASD classes are great. But the idea is that at some stage you're including into the mainstream school. You're including in. Because life is about being included. And at 18 years of age, you want your child to come out the other side and be included, and to be able to be included, and to be able to integrate into society. So I couldn't understand how this could be, that we applied for the resources, that there were no resources given, and that we had to fight. And these parents were saying, well, maybe we'll have to choose the ASD class because we're not going to get the resources. And I said, but, what about being able to integrate with their peers and being included and the whole lot? So we said, we're going to fight. We're going to fight because you know what? They have a right. We're going to fight. So what happened then was quite stressful, actually, because the 3 little boys Shay, Killian and Jamie, who were starting school, needed the help. They absolutely were ready to join school, but they still needed support. So unfortunately, I was put in a really, really awful predicament, and even talking about it now, it's stressful even thinking back. I had to make a decision to take resources from Caitlin, a little girl further up the school, Roisin's daughter, who has really significant medical needs. really significant medical needs, and she had been assigned SNA support previously. And I had to, in order to allow these children to come into school and to be included in school, I had to make a decision, because the CNO told me, you have the resources, you have enough resources, it's your job to allocate. And this is what every principal, this will be very, very familiar to every principal. You have the resources, and parents will hear this as well. The principal has the resources. Oh no, there's no problem. The principal has the resources. They'll allocate the resources. You just make sure your child gets the resources. But the problem is, yes, the principal has resources, but not enough. Not enough to do the job properly. And what happens then is somebody misses out. And in this case, Caitlin missed out. For a whole year. For a whole year, she was left vulnerable with no SNA support. Now, that was a tough decision to make. I wasn't going to get it right no matter what I did. And no principal, nobody should ever be put in that position. No parent should ever be put in that position where their child has been sent to school and they're worried about their child because they haven't got the sufficient access that they need. So, to continue on with the story, it left everybody feeling very uncomfortable, very anxious and very upset. This is not the inclusion model that the EPSEN Act proposes. And it's actually written down in legislation in relation to children transitioning from preschool into school, which our early intervention class was, and from primary school into secondary school. It's there in the legislation. The problem is the wording, where possible, not where possible, has to happen. That the special education and related support services to be provided to the child to enable the child to effectively make the transition from preschool education to primary school education. I'm going to read that again. That the special education and related support services, and that's the key, the related support services to be provided to the child to enable the child to effectively make the transition from preschool education to primary school education. So it was there in word, but in practice it didn't happen because the support services weren't given. So the Act, albeit well-intentioned, is found to be lacking in the implementation due to the lack of related supports and services. Now, I'm just going to give you a little bit of insight into my day in school. And I suppose this is why I'm here. This is what inspired me to get together with the PAG group, as we call ourselves now, the Parent Action Group, to come together, to have this meeting, to let people know what's going on. A diagnosis, or they're worried that their child isn't meeting milestones or isn't following the trajectory that maybe other children have. And they ring and they want help and they want to know where to go and what to do, and they don't know what to do. And they're looking for support and they're looking for a place in school. And it's very hard actually to sit with that because you want to help everybody. You want to give everybody the support that they need. But unfortunately, there's not enough support there at the minute. So the experience of meeting parents in my office over the last few years, or speaking to parents on the phone after a new and recent diagnosis, is what has us here this evening. The system is not working. The system is not working. I've seen parents who are very stressed and anxious because their child has been waiting for an assessment for a year, and they've been told it could be another year before their child will be seen, while knowing that the time is of the essence and that early intervention is key. This isn't working. It's not good enough. I've parents whose children are in need of speech and language and occupational therapy services. Sound familiar? These services are essential for addressing the needs of the individual child in order for them to progress and reach their potential. They're still waiting, not only on public lists, but also on private lists. It's horrendous. It's not good enough, and it's not working. I have parents who would dearly love to have their child attend mainstream, but are afraid because they have no guarantee of support when they get there. That's not good enough. That's not inclusion. That's not looking after the rights of the individual child. We have children who wish to integrate into mainstream for part of the day, And there are schools that have children in AS classes who want to integrate and be included for part of the day, that they're on that journey where they're doing it little by little. But you need to have the resources in the school to allow that to happen, or they can't do that. So how is the inclusion model, how is the word, the EPSEN Act, how is the word going to become deed if we don't put support in place? Otherwise it's fantasy, lads. It's fantasy to expect it to happen. If we want to stay true to the intent of the EPSEN Act, then we must put word into action. How do we do this? In the aftermath of the battle that we had to gain resources in our school, the group still felt, so we got what we needed. But it was a fight. It was a march to the Dole, out in the pouring rain, all the children up with us for the day. It was a campaign that went on for a full year, but we got what we needed in the end. But you know what? When you're sitting there and you're thinking about the children in front of you, you're thinking of every child, because every child matters in this country. And it's not good enough. It's not good enough to expect principals and schools to go up and have to fight so hard for what is a right, an individual right for every child. So we thought, you know what? The work's not done. We need to continue with this. We need more action. So myself and Dr. Aveen Matthews here, we contacted Micheál Carrigy. And Micheál is the chairperson on the steering committee for autism. And we visited Shannon Aaron back there in November, in Leinster House. And we were giving Micheál a submission which laid out a 5-year plan. So we thought about this carefully. We thought, what do we need? If we needed inclusion, and if we want inclusion, and if we want the best for our children, and the best opportunities for social interaction, for social integration, because you know what, we can avoid that, or we can, we can shield that. But at the end of the day, guys, every child's going to, please God, reach 18 years of age, and then the school system finishes, and then what? And then that's what we need to look at. What's there then? What have we got in place? So we start early. We start early, and we give everything we possibly can to these children early so that there's every chance for them later on. So we went to Leinster House with our 5-year plan to address the main barriers as we saw them to the implementation of inclusive practice. And we mentioned, both in the Department of Education and to Micheál, that actually, as NCSE themselves, the National Council for Special Education, have it documented themselves that Ireland could be in breach of the UN Convention for Human Rights for people with disability. It could be in breach with what we're doing at the minute. So what we looked at were 4 points here. Number 1, comprehensive teacher training, an amendment to the undergraduate programmes and postgraduate programmes in the colleges of education to allow for a greater understanding of neurodiversity and how best to support all children with additional needs in the classroom, because that's not being done, guys. No, the staff aren't being trained. So you might go in and you might go into an ASD class, the training is done retrospectively. There's no training being done in the training colleges, or very minimal. Teachers aren't trained. Nobody has been trained to do this. And if any training has been done, we've gone off and done it ourselves, off our own back. That's not acceptable. Every child has the right for their teacher to understand them, whether they're neurodiverse, whether they're neurotypical. Whatever need they have, teachers should be trained. Because if we're only training teachers for English, Irish and maths and different things like that, sure, we're not training them at all. So change the programme, change the undergraduate programme, amend it to allow for comprehensive training, amend the postgraduate programme. And we would also be looking at rolling out a national training programme for current teachers already in situ who need to be trained in the needs of their students. And as I've said, training should never happen in retrospect. You know, we wouldn't do that with children with no additional needs. So why is it okay to do it with children who do have additional needs? So that's number 1. That's essential. Everybody needs to be trained and understand everything there is to know, the knowledge base that we have at the minute. Medical people are constantly upskilling and training on what's coming down the line. We need to do the same. As was clearly mentioned in the Act, direct support provision. Now this I think is essential, and I think this would work very well. Direct support provision in the form of a multidisciplinary team assigned to a cluster of schools, somewhat like the NEPS model, would provide direct, tailored and layered support to a cohesive strategy. Now what does that mean? That means that instead of parents having to go make an appointment, being on a waiting list for speech and language, being on a waiting list for OT, no OT support, no speech and language, lists are so long. How am I going to get the support? Bundling children into the car after school. We need to go up for speech and language. We need to go and do this. Pulling children out of school because we've an appointment here, we've an appointment there. What if it was all in-house? What if we had a multidisciplinary team that was assigned to the school, that knew the children, that knew the background, and that there was a cohesive, streamlined, smart approach to this, and the parents aren't waiting? And it's the automatic right, because it's there in the legislation. But it's not happening. So, if we did have this, the team would assist the school in implementing an evidence-based, professionally directed, individual education plan for every child. Now that's part of the EPSEN Act, that every school, and that hasn't been properly implemented either, by the way, that every school should have an individual education plan for the child, looking at targets. What are we going to do? What's our baseline? What are we working towards? Review. Have we achieved it? If we've achieved it, brilliant. Where do we move to? If we haven't achieved it, why haven't we achieved it? We need to look back and see what do we need to do. So every child is properly looked after. So this would cut the need for waiting lists. For, as I said, parents taking children out of school for therapy, for anxiety over appointments and taking time off work. It supports the school and streamlines smart practice in assessing, diagnostics and provision of therapy for our young people. The beauty of this model, and I want all parents, that, whether you have a child with additional needs or not, the beauty of this model is that there is a possibility of screening practice to pick up queries of children who may otherwise slip through the system that haven't been already identified. So this would serve a big purpose. We would be getting a great view of our children and making sure that we're getting in there early. All children in school would benefit from this. All staff would benefit from the support. Parents would benefit, and there would be a joined-up effort in the best interests of the child. Third point, SNA support. And I suppose I don't want to digress too much from this, but I'm just wondering about, when I worked in England, we didn't have SNAs. SNAs is like special needs assistant. What about a teacher's assistant? What about just having a teacher's assistant? We're not focusing on any particular individual group. Why are we pointing out any group? Teacher assistant is there to help everybody. Every child needs assistance from time to time. So I just don't want to digress on that, but I wonder about the terminology sometimes that we use in relation to particular children. And I think we need to be careful about that as well. And that maybe is something that we need to pause, reflect and review. But at the minute, SNA support is crucial for children with additional needs to have equal access to the curriculum and to be properly included in school. As it states in the Act, however, the interests of all children in the class must be considered. And this is the message that needs to come home as well. That we're not just here fighting for children with additional needs, we're fighting for all children. Because when our children are not supported, all children actually suffer. Teacher suffers, everybody suffers. We need to have the correct support, and nobody knows that better than me. How difficult it is trying to manage not only a classroom, but a school where there are insufficient supports in place. It's chaotic, and learning isn't optimum when in that environment. So as a teacher and a principal, I know only too well how insufficient human resources can impact all children and create incredible anxiety and stress on staff in schools. It's non-negotiable. If we are to honour the dignity and rights of our students, then sufficient resources must be put in place. And you might ask the question, how do we determine what's sufficient? At the minute, there's a very clumsy model for assigning allocated resources to a school. And that model is based on where you live, what the social demographic is, whether you're mixed school, whether you're not a mixed school, whether it's a male-dominated school or a female-dominated school. All these things come into the mix, complex needs. But it's a clumsy model because we live in a nice leafy lane area in Toher and we were deemed not to have any problems. Nobody could have any additional needs there. It was grand. They were fine over there. They're grand. Don't be worrying about them now. But actually, we needed extra help. So this model didn't work for us. So how do we determine what's sufficient? Well, we've got our multidisciplinary team attached to our school, don't we? They're objective. They're professional. They're working in lots of different schools. They're not just for us. They're assigned to a cluster of schools. So they can see, does the school need more resources? Do they not? Look at the child. Look at the individual child. Do they need more resources? They may actually say, not at all. No, you don't need more resources there. Sure, look, if you use this strategy, that's going to work perfectly. Or no, that child doesn't need SNA support. They're well independent. If you do this, this, and this, that'll work perfectly. So it can be a very objective model. And we can have fairness for every school. And that every child's been looked after. So finally, this is the last point. If we're really serious about honouring the Convention on Human Rights for the person with disabilities, then we really need to address the area of class size in our country. So the pupil-teacher ratio. We cannot fulfil our obligation to all our children for inclusivity in classes that are too large. So there are the 4 points. And I've written them on the front of the booklet there for you so that it'll remind you what we need in order to be able to include all our children in our school. Guys, there's no denying the statistics. I've been teaching a long time now. And I can see there's a change. There's an increase in children with additional needs. Can't give you the reason for it, but it's fact. That's the reality. So, I've seen over the last number of years a marked and steady rise in the number of children presenting in services and in schools across the country with additional needs. They may have additional needs in some areas, but they too possess additional gifts. And given the right supports, time and patience, will surpass the expectations of most. And I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. I have seen incredible things. And the teachers here who are here from Tullydonald will tell you the same thing. The joy with the little things that we see when a child makes progress. It's incredible. And it doesn't have to happen fast. Have the patience, wait, and it will come. As a principal of a primary school, all our children matter to me. All our children. Those who have additional needs, but equally those who do not have additional needs must reach their potential too. Without the supports necessary, everybody suffers. This is why I urge you tonight as parents to take this unique opportunity to have your say, to have your voice heard, and to potentially have an impact on how legislation is amended going forward in the history of our state. This could be a moment in history where you, the voice of the people of Ireland, can change something that's really not working and it is damaging our children and is not giving them optimum opportunity to reach their potential. On the inside of your booklet, there's a page. It's after the first page with what we're looking for. And it's a copy and paste from the Department of Education website that give the links to that you can click into, whether you're a staff member, whether you're a parent, whether you're a member of the public, to have your say on this issue. And there's a portal on the Department of Education website, EPSEN Act Review. If you put that into Google, it will come up. You click on the link and you put in your submission. Now, we've given you some information there in that little booklet tonight, and Liam Doran is going to talk to you a little bit more on the Act and the amendment of the Act so that you've got a bit more information on that. But I urge you, the only reason we have called people out here tonight is for you to have a full understanding that your say is necessary. If it's like this, if that time passes by and we get to the 3rd of March and nobody submits any information or voices their opinion or mentions their concerns, the Department of Education will say, but sure, look, we put it out to the public, nobody said anything, everybody must be happy. Sure, nobody said anything, they must be all right with it. This opportunity doesn't come up every day. Amending an act that's been in place since 2004, 18 years. This is a really unique opportunity to put in a submission to tell the Department of Education, the government, the Department of Health, this is not good enough. This is not good enough for our children. This could be our grandchild. It could be a niece. It could be a nephew. We need to work together and we need to let the powers that be know that that's not enough. And we need the resources to do the work. Thank you very much for your time. Who is it? Paula. I'm going to hand you over to Councillor Paula Butterley. Thank you, Paula.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sure you'll all be delighted to hear that I'm going to bring you through 40 pages of legislation at 8 o'clock or 8:15. It's all right, Seamus, you can stay sitting. He warned me he'd shoot me himself if I did. Now, Anne-Marie has covered an awful lot of the points in regards to the EPSEN Act and the review, but I'd like to start with the Act in itself, and I will not go through 40 pages. I guarantee you I'll be very brief, actually. The EPSEN, the spirit of the Act itself. So when it was conceived and when most of it was enacted back in 2004 and in subsequent years, what was it trying to achieve? What was its purpose? What was the spirit of it? And as Anne-Marie quite rightly said, it was to provide the possibility, wherever a parent chose, to allow their child who had special or additional needs to be educated alongside other children who didn't have additional or special needs within the mainstream. Now, that could mean your neighbour, your sisters, your siblings, your cousins, and if you're from, a country area like Toher, you're related to half the parish anyway, so it really is a family affair. But it's so important because by having this inclusive model and providing the supports for these children, and it's not just children, that have ASD. It includes all children who have additional needs. So it's supposed to be an inclusive model for all children with additional needs. And on that, it's supposed to equip them, not just at primary school, but from primary to secondary up until the age of 18. And then hopefully that they will have acquired the necessary skills to go beyond that, be it in third level education, but out into the world, where they can contribute, where they can be fulfilled, and where they can be happy. So with all of that in mind, and with the spirit of the Act in mind, what brings us here? Well, first and foremost, that was nearly 20 years ago. And I firmly believe that all legislation, all law, should be a living instrument. It's not a piece of paper or something that is set down in stone and never changes. It needs to change. It needs to reflect the changing societies that we live in. So it's a living instrument. And with that in mind, as Anne-Marie quite rightly said, we need at times to pause and reflect and see and analyse what we're doing right and where we're going wrong and get the opportunity to adjust that. And that, as Anne-Marie rightly said, doesn't come every day. to have this possibility to review and to have a change. So if you're asking yourself, well, how does this affect me? If you have a child with additional needs, ask yourself, well, am I receiving the supports I need? And if the answer to that is no, well, then you should make a submission. If you feel that you're being segregated or separated in any way in regards to your child's additional needs, educational needs, if the answer to that is yes, well, then you need to make a submission. So the legislation, very often people think, oh, legislation is something that happens up there in the Dáil and has nothing to do with me. It is not. It is something that is actually, in this case, very relevant to you. And by voicing your opinions in a very simple, matter-of-fact way, you get the opportunity to make amendments to the law, to tell the legislators what it is that you feel is not working, and make a suggestion on how to rectify that and make it work for the benefit of your children today and your children's children tomorrow, because it's an evolution. It's not a static situation. So I think that could well be my phone, I'd say. That was my timer to tell me to stop. So I would urge all of you to make a submission. And as Anne-Marie said, there's a link there on the government site in which to do it. It's not complicated. We're not asking you to sit down and answer loads of questions and start dreaming up big legalese words. There are a series of questions that they ask you to give your opinion, and then there's a series of text boxes where you can give your opinion and your experiences. And when they're all pulled together, hopefully there'll be common themes. And from these common themes, the legislators will be able to put in the correct wording that will allow for amendments and relevant amendments to the existing law. And if we all get together and make those submissions and make them relevant, well, then we'll have a new piece of legislation or amended piece of legislation that will start working even better. Because let's not forget that we have come a long way in 20 years. You know, a situation 30 years ago in this country, it was very hard to even get recognition for any child who had special needs or additional needs. We are trying to make it work. We are trying to make it better. But I have to recognise as well that I know too many people who fight, stress, lose sleep, running around picking up the kids from school, running out to an appointment, going to Dublin, waiting on a waiting list, seeing if they can get around a waiting list. So it does need to change. But I think the very fact that we have the opportunity to make a submission and there is this public consultation, I think we really, really need to make it work. But it's you that will make it work. Thank you. Who am I introducing now?
Colin Martin's going to come in from Brussels, see if he can sing a song in the interim.
I could do a jig.
And maybe if you just want to mention on the Tullydon Facebook page, Kelly has put up a link directly into that page that's on the brochure there.
I think she's said it already, hasn't she?
Did I say that on the Facebook page, on the Tullydon Facebook page, so that people don't have to go looking for it? If you go onto the Tullydon Facebook page, the link for that the link for that page is already there. So just to save people having to look for it, all you have to do is go on, click on the link, and then click on the link for what you want to answer. Is that okay?
Couldn't have said it better.
There you go. There you go. So here we've Colin. Welcome, Colin.
Hear me there, Anne-Marie, yeah?
We can hear you perfectly. You're on the screen here in Donegan's column. Welcome from Brussels. I feel like I'm on column the Eurovision, yeah. How many points are you going to get, Colin?
Well, I can guarantee you I can give you 12 points. Number one for the group that you have there, and number two for all the good work you're doing in the whole space. But, no, look, I'm delighted to be here. And apologies I can't be there tonight. Genuinely would have loved to have been there. I suppose, look, I've seen a lot of the work firsthand. I suppose, look, initially I'll speak as a parent because I'm a parent in the school of a child that's in the same class as a number of special needs students. And like, well, I just see it from my son's perspective, and I suppose he had a birthday party there only a week ago. And the three guys in his class all were at the party and all had a wonderful day. And when you can see what the integration does for them, and when you see my son, if I ever ask my son who's his best friends in school, he'll always list off, I won't say the three names, I know it's been well extreme than that, but the three lads in the class, they're the first names they shout out in terms of his friends in school. So I see firsthand what that integration, but how them students do benefit from it. And I think in the longer run, it only can be good news for everybody. But I suppose just on the bigger picture of this, I'm just here to echo my support for the initiatives Anne-Marie has put forward here tonight in terms of encouraging as many people as possible to make submissions toward the EPSEN Act. It's something that is up for review, and I think at a whole lot of levels there's a encouragement for greater integration. I suppose at EU level here, it really dates back to what's known as the Salamanca Statement in 1994 from a UNESCO World Conference on special needs. And they identified that integration in education was one of the critical things in terms of, if you like, supports that can be put in place. And along with the inclusive education, obviously they pointed towards smaller class sizes and for great additional training as well. And I think so it's not just in Ireland, it's recognised across Europe equally as important. Interestingly, mentioning the training element, there's actually 800 fully funded positions in Ireland that have not been filled. And while we need special needs, training for special needs assistants and indeed teachers in classrooms, we also need people to take up those positions as well, because I know those discussions with Simon Harris, the Minister for Further Education recently, in relation to encouraging, increasing the capacity in training in what essentially is the five main key areas, which is social workers, OTs, speech and language, psychology and physio. And to think that there's 800 fully funded positions not being taken up, so it's important to integrate students, but it's important, I think, as part of submissions in relation to this, that we point to the need for greater capacity in the education system to support teachers, to support special needs assistants, and indeed to build capacity within the whole sector to support the work. I suppose just from my own perspective, or a bit of a shout out as well for both Minister Josepha Madigan and indeed Senator Micheál Carrigy, who I think Anne-Marie has met a month or two ago, who are doing really good work in the area. And look, we all know there's not enough, but at the same time, I don't think it should go unnoticed that there was a 60% increase in the positions and in funding in the last 10 years. So, like that shouldn't go unnoticed. But as we say, the EPSEN Act is up for review, and I think the more we can push people towards an integrated system, the better. And I suppose all I can speak is from my own personal experience at home and see how well it's worked in our local school, which in fairness to Anne-Marie, she's been the champion of it so much. And secondly, from the European perspective, where there's a push, it's not consistent across Europe, but the push is towards a greater integration in any way possible. And the fact that it dates back as far as 1994, the recognition that it does focus minds that we really, really need to push forward in this area. So look, I don't have anything really else to say other than to encourage people yet again to put in submissions. There's also a simple survey that people can do as well. So if you don't have time to put something, you might feel you mightn't feel comfortable or feel you have the background to put a substantial submission in, but all you have to do is complete the survey, and your voice and your opinion will be heard as well. So look, that's all I have to say, and congratulations to Anne-Marie and everyone involved. It's great to see such a big crowd of Dunnigans there tonight, and hopefully if you have another night, if you're having another event, I'll try and get home for it. And thanks again, Anne-Marie, and best of luck the rest of the evening.
Thanks very much, Colin. Thank you. So that was Colin streaming in there from Brussels. And And now we're going to have Damien Connolly, who's a clinical psychologist. For any of you that were at the last meeting last November, Damien spoke in person here, but he was unable to get down here tonight. He had another commitment, so he is going to come online like Colin as well with a little bit of information for us. We could jump to somebody else instead. We'll jump to Paul instead. You can continue with Damien and then we'll jump to Paul. So I'm going to hand you over to Paul while we're waiting for Damien. Thank you.
Hello everyone, can everyone hear me all right? My name's Paul and my son Jamie was diagnosed with ASD in early 2001. Jamie had a severe speech delay and he only had about 20 words by the time he was about 3 years old. Jamie also had problems engaging socially. He had a short attention span and he had trouble transitioning from one activity to another. And as with any parent, we were worried about Jamie's education and how best to provide him with an education that best suits his abilities. We were very fortunate to get a place in one of St Colin Kill's early intervention classes. And early intervention has had a transformative effect for Jamie. He's now talking, though he's still a little bit behind on his peers, but his engagement with his classmates, with his SNAs and teachers has improved enormously. We have also found strategies which help Jamie transition from task to task. These strategies also work well at home too. So in Jamie's second year in early intervention, we noticed he was a little bit more unsettled and was becoming a little bit more dysregulated at times. And after some discussion with Anne-Marie and Jamie's teachers, it was decided to give Jamie the opportunity to attend a mainstream junior infants class for a few hours a day. At first we were a little daunted at this. Would this be the right, would Jamie transition into a mainstream class with other neurotypical children? Was it the right place for Jamie given his ASD? Well, however daunted we were as parents, Jamie certainly wasn't. His ongoing time in a mainstream class has allowed him the opportunity to make amazing progress. His interest in dinosaurs, planets and black holes and animals has increased exponentially. He can pronounce dinosaur names that I have difficulty pronouncing. He's learning Irish and maths. He's begun to learn to write. And his reading is now par with his peers. Jamie has had the opportunity to make friends with other neurotypical children his age, and he got his first Christmas card this year. He took part in the Wrigley Nativity play at Christmas, just past there. He was a chicken, and he loved it. And when the play was over, completely unbidden by anyone, he started bowing like he was a Shakespearean actor. So Jamie will finish up in early intervention in June this year. And we've begun the process of looking for a place for him in a school close to home. Thanks to his time in early intervention, we feel Jamie can attend a mainstream class in a mainstream school, so long as that he has the supports there. Our fear is that if mainstream classes do not have the necessary supports in place, that it may be recommended by a school that a place in an ASD class would be more suitable. Jamie's time in a mainstream setting has demonstrated, absolutely, his ability to thrive given the opportunity. So that's why I'm here tonight, to tell you about Jamie and his in the mainstream setting, and to help ensure that Jamie and others like him, now and in the future, will have access to the right supports to thrive wherever that is, whether that's in an ASD class or in mainstream setting. So our input into the EPSEN Act review will help shape that future of education for our children. So I would urge everyone here You all have the little booklets there, and in the back of it you see the bits in red, the amendments that we propose to make, that Liam will go through in a little bit, to make a submission online to review the Act, because that's the only way that we will orchestrate change and secure the support needed to fully implement the Act for all our children, whether they're neurotypical or not. So thank you very much. Who are we going to now? Damien. Well, a few more technical difficulties, but we're trying to get Damien on WhatsApp now, and we'll see if we can get the link going. We have him now. Okay. Thank you.
You need to put him on the screen, Barry.
Yeah. Okay, right. I'm going to put you on the screen now, Damien. Thank you.
Oh yeah. So just want to welcome. Hello, Damien.
Hi, mate.
How are you? So just want to welcome Damien Connolly, clinical psychologist. Damien's done a lot of work with the children in our school, given a lot of advice, and is a real advocate as well for the best interest of children with additional needs. So I'd just like to hand you over to Damien now. Thanks, Damien.
Hi, everybody. Just to let you know, this is obviously happening from my house. I know we're having a few difficulties with gremlins with Wi-Fi and things like that. So because it's happening from the house, I'll apologise in advance if my kids burst in brandishing swords or Nerf guns or stuff. I've told them to stay out, but it might not work. So what I want to just do, I'd hope to have a presentation, and I can email this presentation to Anne-Marie in it because there's a few references and things in it. I just wanted to briefly run through maybe what some of the key ideas of the EPSEN Act were. What hasn't happened kind of so far, what the implications of that are, just to give you some really, really brief research, and I'll just include some references around inclusion in schools, and maybe just some ideas and maybe what people could put to the review of the EPSEN Act, or just even some kind of food for thought. I suppose the EPSEN Act was kind of passed in July 2004. At the time when it was done, it was kind of seen as something that was really groundbreaking, and it was kind of putting inclusive education on a legal statutory footing, and it was really providing for children to have their educational needs assessed, but also to have them met. I suppose the EPSEN Act it not only promised that there would be a level of educational equality, but there'd also be a legal obligation to deliver education in mainstream settings. And obviously that was where possible, because obviously it isn't possible to educate every child in a mainstream setting, and that's certainly not what's been argued for. But I suppose despite kind of it being, I think it's pretty much almost 18 years since the Act was kind of passed, a lot of the main pieces of the Act that are actually a benefit to children with special educational needs still haven't been commenced. So the main things, I suppose, from my point of view, that would kind of be a benefit to children with special educational needs coming from the Act, and the things that haven't been included are the parts that would give children a right to, and a legal right to, an education assessment of their needs, a legal right to the development of an individual education plan or an IEP that would be based on the initial assessment, a legal right to the delivery of the education supports that were detailed in the plan, and also a legal right to an independent appeals process. So really, what does that mean then, the fact that those commencements or those sort of provisions haven't been commenced? It means that children with special educational needs do not have a legal right for the assessment of their educational needs. It means they do not have a legal right to have their educational needs addressed through an IEP. It means the parents have no legal right to input into their child's IEP. And it also means that you've got no right to a legal or an independent appeals process. In practice, I suppose, what does that mean? Because I suppose a lot of these vital sections of the Act haven't been implemented, I think kind of provisions for children with special educational needs, they're not standardised in any way. And it also means that they're kind of quite haphazard. They can be very, very good in one particular school, and maybe a school 10 miles down the road, they're doing something maybe completely different. Obviously, when a child has, at the minute when a child has, without special education needs, if they have an individual education plan at all, it's really down to kind of, the motivation of the teachers, the principal, the school itself. Again, because vital sections of the Act haven't been implemented, there's no standard set for an IEP, even if one exists. So say there's no standard, one IEP might be kind of 3 or 4 lines for a child, another in a really detailed and dedicated school could be 10, 20, 30 pages, and there's really no standard as to who should input into that, as to whether it should be teachers, parents, speech and language therapists, OTs, psychologists. Again, just when you have these things on the legal footing, it introduces a greater element of standardization. I suppose also because those things haven't been put on a legal footing, it also introduces an element of discrimination. So say for parents that are better off and maybe a little bit more able and well off, they can afford to have those various educational assessments completed and the plans done up privately. There's also issues then around the fact that these pieces of the Act haven't been implemented. It kind of has the unintended consequence of nearly inadvertently forcing some parents into a non-inclusive setting. And examples of that in practice might be, say, where a child is able to go into a mainstream, maybe say a child that has a diagnosis of ASD, they might well be able to go into a mainstream. They might need a little bit of support, but the concern is maybe the resources aren't there in terms of SNAs, that the resources aren't there in terms of funding, and they know that if their child goes into the ASD class, that they will be guaranteed a smaller kind of class size. They'll also be guaranteed one teacher and 2 special needs assistants, whereas they won't get anything close to that in the mainstream, even though the child might benefit more from being in the mainstream because the resources aren't there and because those pieces of the Act aren't implemented. It's nearly forcing parents backwards in a way. Again, just generally because those kind of provisions haven't been put on a statutory footing, it means that there's no kind of, costings. Those things will never be funded for on an annual basis. So kind of things kind of are very much at the whim of kind of who's in government at the time or the various kind of funding priorities. Whereas if it was on a statutory footing, kind of those things wouldn't be possible. Just to give you some brief kind of research on the inclusion kind of piece. There are 2 aspects to it. There are benefits for inclusive education for people who don't have special educational needs and benefits for children who have special educational needs. I think kind of the biggest concerns usually for parents of children who don't have special educational needs with children who have special education needs being put in the same class. Parents are also often worried that having those children in the class, that it will kind of impede or impact on their children's learning, and it will also impede on the amount of attention that they get. Yet when you kind of look at the research, and it's taken across a variety of different countries, which includes Ireland, the vast majority of studies tend to show that sort of upwards of 60% of children who don't have educational needs have no effects, or there's a neutral effect of having children with special educational needs in the class, and up to 25% of children who don't have special education needs actually get something positive and get a huge benefit from it. So in the main, kind of those fears that people often have really aren't realised. Just some very brief research on the inclusion piece and benefits for children who actually have special education needs. There's very strong evidence that students with kind of special education needs benefit from being in an inclusive setting. I wanted to just talk about one large study. In 2012, there was a large study done in the USA in Massachusetts. It involved 68,000 primary and secondary school students with special education needs. So it was a huge study, and on average what they tended to find was that students with special educational needs who spent a large proportion of their school day in with their kind of non-special educational needs peers, that they performed significantly better on kind of tests of language, tests of mathematics, than students who didn't spend those time in inclusive settings. I had a nice graph that would have looked nice on the screen to go with this, but unfortunately, seeing as we're on WhatsApp, we'll have to abandon that. I will give these slides to Anne-Marie just maybe to distribute. There are a number of references for quite a large number of studies on the benefits of inclusive education for children with special educational needs. What I wanted just maybe to do in the last few slides was just to finish up and maybe just to talk about some ideas maybe you might have when you're kind of framing your thoughts around kind of what you might put into the review around special educational needs. I suppose first and foremost, maybe just to say that the fact that there is a review process actually taking place is quite positive. Obviously, it's vital if you want to kind of have a voice or you want to have any change as part of that process that you take part in the review. Maybe we'll just have a look at some ideas and maybe people can sort of think about it. I suppose one of the key things to me is to kind of look at, why it's taken this long to get to where we are. I mean, it's almost 18 years and the most vital and kind of central elements of the EPSEN Act haven't been passed. And it's really need to focus on kind of what blocks are in the system and what's kind of gone wrong there. A thing that's always been a huge bugbear of mine is that these reviews come out And it's almost like you find out about them through the grapevine. And even though kind of I'm often involved in this area, I'm usually told usually about a couple of days before the closing date that these things are actually taking place. So again, I think these things should just be made more obvious. But the fact that you have Anne-Marie and other people highlighting it, I think again, it's really positive. I think another thing then just maybe to have a think about is to maybe ask kind of when will a kind of a detailed and comprehensive costed plan for inclusive education be made available, and that funding should be kind of multi-annual. Again, Anne-Marie will probably mention some of these things, but again, it's to look at what the future plans for special educational needs training are, particularly within teacher training colleges, that a lot of these options should be kind of more mandatory and not optional, and that even when teachers are qualified, that there's maybe more time available for sort of CPD or continuing professional development to free them up to engage in that. I think there should be kind of questions asked about what are the future plans for investment in special needs assistance. And I think I heard Anne-Marie mention it in the UK, you often have this thing around sort of classroom assistance, and maybe that's something that the government kind of should be looking at also, because very much if you need a special needs assistant here, it's very much based on care needs like kind of toileting and feeding, things like that, rather than on the kind of wider things that could be considered in a classroom, maybe where somebody's getting out of their seat or maybe taking away from teacher time in that way. So again, just to consider whether there's any value in changing the kind of role from classroom assistant. I think Anne-Marie had mentioned this already as well, and to me this is kind of a huge part of what the future kind of should look like for anybody with kind of any additional needs, is that the schools and the classrooms should be really fully resourced by kind of mental health and disability teams to include people like psychologists, include people like OTs, include speech and language therapists. There was a pilot scheme that was done called the Early Years Therapy Support Demonstration Project, and it was run in the community healthcare organisation area CHO7, which kind of covers, I think, kind of West Kildare, parts of Dublin, and sort of areas like that. What they've done was that they piloted schemes where they had kind of good, strong links and had kind of SLTs, OTs and that operating within the schools and providing therapies there. The initial evaluations of that have proved to be hugely positive, but the rollout of that beyond the pilot scheme seems to be incredibly slow. So it's really just to kind of figure out, again, what are the blockages with this? I know COVID has been an issue, but hopefully we've kind of maybe moved a little bit beyond that. And sometimes I kind of worry that kind of COVID is just maybe sometimes put in there as an excuse to kind of not move things forward quickly enough. I really think that's a kind of a huge kind of vital part, because there are so many blockages in terms of therapies, in terms of primary care, or in terms of disability network teams. So I think it's really worth asking, when will that pilot be rolled out? And again, kind of why it's sort of taken so long. I think other things may be more general is, are there any kind of more programs in place? What's kind of been rolled out in the schools in terms of maybe addressing sort of stereotypes around people with disabilities or additional education needs? And often the fact that those kind of, ideas that people get in their head, they're often usually kind of a result of a very ill-informed views. So kind of what's been kind of put out there to kind of try and combat those kind of views. Also maybe an idea around, if we are really kind of striving for inclusive education, there are parts of the education system at the minute that excludes other children. For example, the whole piece around July provision, which is open to children with ASD, with kind of severe and profound intellectual disability, as to why that isn't open to other children with other additional special educational needs. So that's again something to be considered. I think that's pretty much kind of all I wanted to say. It probably would have looked a little bit nicer, at least, if I had the slides with me. But I will email them to Anne-Marie. And again, there's a good few references to different studies and research in there. I don't know if people have questions, if you're taking questions, if you're leaving them to the end, or I just need to sign off now.
Would anybody like to ask a question to Damien while we have him? Online, anybody, any questions they'd like to ask? No? If there's any questions at the end anyway, I'll collect questions, Damien, and sure I can give them to you, and I can maybe forward them back to people if people don't feel comfortable on a public forum asking a question. You can come to me at the end. Is that okay? Damien, thanks a million for really good presentation. Great to get all that information, especially around the legislation and the pieces that are left out and that haven't been properly implemented yet. Good to talk to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Damien Connolly. Thank you very much. Yeah, no, you're brilliant. Thanks a million, Damien. Appreciate it. Good luck. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Yeah, so I'm going to hand you over now, ladies and gentlemen, to Dr. Aveen Matthews. And Aveen is a GP, and she also has a little boy in our school, Dara. So she's going to give you a little insight in from the perspective of a parent as to her experience. So over to you, Aveen. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Aveen. I apologise if I'm repeating anything that's already been said. So I'm here tonight. My son, Dara, has autism. And I'm here tonight for three main reasons. Number one, to give you a personal story about our family's struggles under the limitations of the current EPSEN Act. Two, to tell you our story of why mainstream education with support works for us. And number three, to tell you why I, as a mother, feel we need to change the Act. So number one, our struggles. My son Dara is 5. He was diagnosed with autism in August 21 when he was 4 years and 3 months old, which coincided with him starting second year in play school. Dara also has a diagnosis of sensory processing disorder. The early days of the first year of play school in autumn 20 were an absolute nightmare, with meltdown after meltdown and school refusal every day. We persisted and broke through it, and Dara attended school every day. I gave birth to our second child, Kieran, in November 20, and things got worse for Dara after that. Kieran's lovely now, but you know. We made an appointment for an assessment. I knew there was something not quite right. The meltdowns, the head banging, barefoot all the time, inside and out, inability to tolerate noise or bright lights, lack of eye contact, poor social interaction, need for sameness. We couldn't go to cafes or restaurants. Dara couldn't tolerate it. Difficulty transitioning. The list goes on. You know all of this. You've all been there. In April 21, Dara was assessed, and I was told he had sensory processing disorder, which is what I was expecting. I thought that was it, as he had good speech from a very young age and appeared very bright. Little did I know. The occupational therapist said to me that day that he was probably autistic. What? Autistic? I tried to appear calm. I felt the adrenaline rush that every parent in this room knows. I got such a shock. I didn't hear a single word after the words, probably autistic. For me, when it's said about your own child, one gets images of the worst case scenario. It's very different when it's on your own doorstep. I asked the OT, what do I do now? How do we find out for sure? We had 2 further assessments that summer, and in August 21, the diagnosis was confirmed. We had had the summer to prepare, so when the diagnosis came, we weren't overly surprised. For us, it explained a lot of what we were experiencing with Dara on a daily basis. In fact, we were relieved on some level. Now we had a job to do. We had to get on with it. The first question I asked the psychologist when she gave me the diagnosis was, what about school? What do you recommend in Dara's case? Mainstream with SNA support, she said. I thought, grand, thanks. Let's go and organise that, so... Little did I know the battle that lay ahead. My husband Dave and I were very worried about how Dara was going to transition to primary school because his early days of play school had been so difficult. We were afraid that we'd end up reliving what we'd experienced when Dara started play school. We turned our attention to primary school. When I initially spoke to Anne-Marie in September 21 regarding a place for September 22, and I mentioned to her that Dara was autistic, she said, of course he could come on board. She never hesitated. I knew Dara was going to be in good hands. Soon after, I heard the school had applied for extra SNA support and that it had been turned down on more than one occasion. We were already in trouble. There weren't enough SNAs to go around. If a child with autism needs access to an SNA as recommended by a diagnosing clinician, surely that should be a given and not questioned. How wrong I was. I quickly became aware of the archaic system that children with additional needs are at the mercy of in this country. I spoke with Anne-Marie to ask what needs to be done. Remember, Dara wasn't even attending the school yet. He was due to start the following September. Already it seemed we'd have a struggle to get support for him. She asked that I attend a meeting that was being held here last November, which I did. I was horrified to hear that SNAs were being taken from some children to meet the needs of others, and therefore some children, like Caitlin, were being left without support. Surely this couldn't be happening in Ireland in modern times, could it? We fought tooth and nail from November 21 to May 22. Eventually, the government listened in an unprecedented move. The Department of Education sent 5 experts to our school to do a detailed assessment of our needs. 2 psychologists, 1 occupational therapist, 1 inspector from the department, and 1 representative from the National Council for Special Education. One of the most difficult things I've ever had to do as a parent was in May 22, when I had to sit in front of that panel of 5 experts and explain and justify why my Dara needed and deserved access to an SNA. It was one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. It was wrong. I remember saying to myself that no parent should have to fight and beg for help like this. What sort of a country do we live in? Living with autism 24/7 and doing your best for your child is hard enough without having to fight for help. All children with autism need and deserve support. We had to prove it case by case. I came away feeling and knowing that the state and its experts and policymakers just don't get it. If they did, we wouldn't have to grovel. You can have a PhD in honey, but if you haven't tasted honey, you don't know honey. These guys didn't know honey. The good news is that the fight paid off, and the school got 2 more SNAs and a special education teacher. Now there was going to be an SNA in the junior infants classroom when Dara started school in September. He would also have access to a learning support teacher. We were back on track. Mainstream with support. My second point tonight is about mainstream with support. What's so great about mainstream with support? A lot of parents, when they have a diagnosis of a child with autism, they say, well, isn't an ASD class the way forward? ASD classes definitely have a place. For a certain number of children with autism, they are definitely the right choice. Changing the EPSEN Act does not change that. Every parent is afraid and fearful when they hear the diagnosis of autism. I know that fear. I was there. As a parent, you want the best for your child. You want to make sure that they get the best supports that they need. And many parents think that an ASD class is the only way to get that support. But it's not the case. Mainstream with support is the best option for more autistic children than you think. When children with autism are supported appropriately, they can have very, very good outcomes. But when children with autism are not supported, they can have very, very poor outcomes. And early intervention is key. Let me just tell you how the mainstream model with inclusion has worked for us and our family. Dara started mainstream on the 30th of August 22. I walked him into the yard to line up with his 13 other new classmates. There was no meltdown. He wasn't upset in any way. He just walked quietly and copied what everyone else was doing and slotted seamlessly into place. He walked into the building without even looking back. I was astonished. I was so thrilled to see our autistic son standing alongside the 13 other 5-year-olds in that line. He was one of them. He was going to be able to become independent. This was huge. And from day one, he had been one of the gang, included, not judged, part of his community. When I looked at Dara in that line, I asked myself the question, why did we have to fight so hard to have the equal right to stand in that line with the 13 other children? It's not okay. It's time for change. I know that when parents of neurotypical children hear there's an autistic child in the class, they quietly worry, is that going to distract my little Johnny? Could they not put that child somewhere else? I get it, it's human nature. But let me tell you about how everyone benefits from inclusion. The neurotypical children, over here, benefit hugely from having a child with additional needs in the class. In fact, in Dara's class, there are 2 autistic children out of 14. These children teach others that not everyone is the same. From a young age, they learn to be okay with difference. They're not afraid of it, like our generation are, like adults are. They learn to be caring, compassionate, and tolerant. The classroom, as Amri said, models the real world. All these children, when they go out into the world, will meet all sorts of people. People who are neurotypical and people with additional needs. What a great opportunity to be educated in a system and an environment where they are so well prepared for the real world from the age of 5. Early intervention is key. Additional needs are not the problem, the system is the problem. On the other side, Dara benefits from mainstream with support because the mainstream classroom with neurotypical children helps his social skills to develop. And that's one of the main difficulties with autistic children, and especially with Dara, it's social skills. It helps him to become more resilient. Because of his access to an SNA, Dara gets regular movement breaks so that he remains regulated. This means his brain is calm and primed for learning. He's also very lucky to be in a small class of only 14 people. Due to his access to learning support, Dara's communication skills and fine motor skills are improving. The frequency of his physical outbursts has reduced and he appears to be far less overwhelmed. The change in my son since he started school in September has been immense. Don't get me wrong, we still deal with the daily challenges at home, but his social skills have really improved. He plays with his friends and he enjoys school. He's very lucky. He goes to one of the most inclusive schools in the country, one with a winning formula. Can we put up, oh yeah. Oh, this, we were discussing this the other night, and I said, sorry, can I just, to understand this, can I just draw a picture, please, because I have to understand it. So this is the model, as I see it at the moment, in a lot of schools under the current EPSEN Act. Here's Dara, okay, here's my child. And in a lot of schools, you have a big class of 30 children, and he's the only one, here. You've got a teacher, in a lot of cases, as has been pointed out already, where there hasn't been adequate training. So the teacher is out of his or her depth, Over here, here's Dara, needs an SNA. Sorry, computer says no. No SNA. And in the ideal world, we'd love to have SLT and OT here, in the ideal world. So these are all empty spaces. But on the next slide, so this is what we were potentially faced with and we fought and fought for. And this is what Dara has now, but almost this. This is Dara in his class of 14 children. He has access to his SNA and his learning support teacher. He has a wonderful teacher who knows exactly what she's at. Now, we're not here yet in this country. We're not here yet. But and that's a road ahead of us. But to have this, you have a teacher who's on it. We have SNA, learning support, small group, winning formula. So that's the bottom line. That's the message. So basically, he's very lucky because he has that winning formula. But we really had to fight for it. So every child in this country deserves that without having to fight. So we made so much noise in the government that the Minister for Special Education, Josepha Madigan, came to visit the school in October, and a great thing happened. Dara was brought out of his class with some of the other children with additional needs, and he met the Minister personally, and he personally presented her with a bunch of flowers, and he said, "My name is Dara." So we've come a long way. But the icing on the cake for me came in mid-term when Dara was invited on a play date. And any mother of a child with additional needs knows what a big deal that is. And then there was the Wrigley Nativity at Christmas. Bearing in mind that not so long ago we had huge trouble trying to get Dara to enter a play school classroom of 11 children, I didn't know what to expect. So I dressed him up as the innkeeper and set him loose into the classroom with his classmates. I felt like I was letting him into a lion's den. I told myself, it'll make him resilient. But I couldn't believe it. He walked out on stage with the bright lights, the music, a full school hall and lots of crazily dressed children. And he stood up on the stage surrounded by his friends and he sang his song. Not only sang his song, but sang it with such passion that I thought he was going to punch poor Mary in the face, telling her there was no room at the inn. We almost cried with happiness, astonishment and pride. That is the power of inclusion and what it can do. That is the power and importance of the peer group. It's incredible. And as I mentioned earlier, early intervention is key. What matters for me is that Dara is happy and has friends. If your child is happy and they have friends, the rest falls into place. I knew when the play date came and when he sang in chorus on the stage that we were on the right path for us, mainstream with support. My third and final point is, why do we need to change the Act? As I said, the Minister visited us personally at our school. She apologised that we'd had to fight so hard to get the support for our children. She said that going forward it should not be as difficult as that and things would get better. And now she has given us a once-in-a-generation opportunity to change the government policy. So why do we need to change the EPSEN Act? Under current legislation, a child with additional needs who wishes to attend mainstream school is not guaranteed the support they need to reach their potential. This means the parents have to fight the way we did, and even then there's no guarantee. Some autistic children who are suited to mainstream have to go to an ASD class to get the SNA support. This can further harm the social skills of those children, so this has to change. We've made the changes in Tullydonnell, now it's time to make the changes at a national level. This is why we need to change the Act. The harm that was done to so many generations of children in this country since the foundation of this state is continuing in 2023. Are our generation no better than the generations before us? Has history taught us nothing? What sort of a country do we live in if we don't prioritise and look after our children with additional needs? I don't want any more parents having to fight for the support the way we did. Children with additional needs are not the problem. The system is the problem. Autism is challenging, but it's nowhere near as challenging as the system. So we need a collective voice to be heard. It's time to take the fear out of autism and additional needs. Too many children have been harmed in Ireland. This has to change right now, and you can help. Ladies and gentlemen, I came here tonight to tell my story so that you can see why we must make a change in the EPSEN Act. As I said, under current legislation, a child is not guaranteed the resources they need when in mainstream education. This is why I am personally calling upon all parents to make a submission to change the EPSEN Act so that every single child with additional needs in this country has the right to an equal opportunity to attend mainstream school if they choose to do so, with appropriate support in place so they can reach their full potential without having to fight for it, as is the case under the current Act. It simply has to change. Don't be afraid to give your child a chance. Believe in them, set them free, and let them fly. You never know, they might surprise you. I know my child did.
Thanks very much, Aveen. It's great to get insights from personal experience like that. I'm going to actually hand you over to Liam Doran now. And Liam's going to go through the piece on the legislation, the piece that needs to be amended. Thanks very much, Liam.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and first of all, my apology for being slightly late, and to thank you all for coming tonight and for participating. My role here, I'm a member of the Board of Management of the school, and I'm not a teacher, and I'm not a parent of a child with special educational needs, so I feel, in one sense, somewhat of an imposter. I particularly feel inadequate after Aveen's story, because I think it does bring it home that you have to live it to really understand the challenges that never end when you have a child with special educational needs. And from my perspective, it was brought home, as has been touched on earlier, by the campaign the school had to mount last year to secure additional SNA and learning teaching resource, which wasn't automatic, even though the children in the school were absolutely qualified for it, absolutely entitled to it, and absolutely would benefit from it. They were not entitled to it because the system, as it were, left Anne-Marie in particular in the position of having to choose who might get some support and then who might lose that support and so on. So in one sense then, we were left to struggle, and we had to have campaigns and threats of pickets on constituency offices and so on. And you really have to ask yourself, in an educational system in a country that has, for example, 5.2 billion in surplus this year, why is it that children who need their support, who would benefit from being mainstreamed, who would blossom, who would integrate into society in a greater level, why is it that the parents in the first instance and teachers with them have to struggle? And why is it that faceless bureaucrats can turn down applications, safe in their offices and their laptops, not really understanding the challenges and not really understanding the lost potential that comes from depriving the child of that support and that opportunity to mainstream? So the school did campaign, the school did succeed in garnering additional resources. The Minister came, as Aoibhinn said, and then this announcement of the review of the legislation was announced. And what we're trying to do, and I think we are succeeding starting tonight, is, as I think Damien said, having public consultation is one thing. But let's be honest, governments thrive on having a public consultation that they hope delivers affirmation of their current approach, not a demand for change, not a demand to do things better. And the only way you will mount that demand is by having the public consultation deliver a huge response, and that response very consistently says how the Act needs to be changed and the benefits from making that change. So what you've heard tonight, if you like, is how the Act is currently failing. It's a well-intentioned Act, and for 04, it's a well-worded Act in many ways. But experience tells us that it isn't delivering. And particularly now that we move with higher levels of if you like, diagnosis and so on, we need to move into mainstreaming becoming the norm for the children, if necessary, as opposed to the exception. And to do that, we need to change the Parent Act. So if I could just ask for one of those sheets, because I forget myself. What you have in front of you now is just a suggested text. And we're not for 1 second saying that as individuals, based upon experience, you can't articulate your journey and other additional things that have to happen with the parent legislation. But we've tended to form the view that if the legislation isn't sufficiently specific, isn't sufficiently directive of the system, both of government and of the administration, then if they're given wriggle room, they will wriggle to the narrow end of the room rather than the wide end of the room, thus limiting resources. So what we've tried to do here, is just give you text that might be suggested as being amendments to a key section of the Act, Section 13, which speaks about, if you like, the individual child and the care plans and so on. So I'll just briefly run through, and this is just text that we have come up with. We are suggesting that you give it serious consideration. We are suggesting that if you see fit, you would include it in your submission, but equally, you can articulate your own perspective and your own changes. We're not saying this is the only thing you can say about the parent legislation, but we are saying that based upon our experience, these are changes to the parent legislation that have to be made to deliver on the ground based upon experience. So if you see from the top, like the current Act, what's struck true, if you like, is that they provide sufficient monies. We're saying provide such monies. Sufficient is that's a sort of a subjective thing. What's sufficient? So we need such monies and other resources for the purpose of preparation and implementation of education plans prepared in respect of it says children currently, we're suggesting each child. You have to make this specific to each child, realising their needs and delivering upon their needs so they can maximise their contribution. So everywhere you'll see in our suggested changes is each child, so that we make this child-specific, not children, which is a kind of a generalised statement, which, as we found out last year, can mean someone gains maybe, but somebody has to lose. And we're saying each child has to gain out of this consistently. So then the others is fairly standard in terms of how these acts are formulated and so on. So we go down to the red. And if I can just very briefly, and you've been very patient so far, so I won't delay you too long. Sections A and B in black text are there currently. What we're suggesting is some additions to the Act, okay, which would require, if you like, direct mention. So C, that the provision of resources by the state shall be sufficient to facilitate the effective implementation of education plans prepared in respect of each child with special education needs. Self-evident, but it's not there currently. So that it would be self-evidently for each child, there'd have to be sufficient resources. D, that provision shall be made at undergraduate level and for ongoing mandatory in-service training for teachers to facilitate the effective implementation of education plans prepared in respect of each child with special educational needs. Now, the view I think that we have is that the simple reality is teachers across on a national level need to be, if you like, updated and made more familiar with the modern thinking and so on. And we're suggesting that the Act should call for this to be done at undergraduate level, when future teachers are being prepared for initial registration, but then mandatorily at in-service, continuous and repeated refresher programs in relation to integration of children with special education needs. So that the teacher, Avon was very kindly talking about a teacher who knows what they're at. I have to claim that the teacher happened to be my daughter who knows what she's at, but that's only a bias, and so on. But you know, all these things have to come together, and the teaching. There's thousands of teachers, and they might be frightened as well of integration and the challenge it brings. So education has got to support them so that they can deliver on behalf of the individual child. But that has to be provided by resources and mandatory in-service training. E, that the number of children in classes and special needs assistance resources shall be such as to ensure the effective implementation of education plans prepared in respect of each child with special educational needs. So again, we're talking there about pupil-teacher ratio and the SNA support in the class. That they have to be sufficient to deliver on each child's individual plan. Leave no wriggle room, no generalisations, be very specific in the parent legislation. That's why we're suggesting this is revised text. F, that multidisciplinary support shall be provided for children to ensure the effective implementation of education plans prepared in respect of each child. I think you'll have heard tonight that the role of OTs and speech and language therapists and psychologists is pivotal and central to all of this happening smoothly and so on. But they're not available to many, many schools and in many, many parents. But perhaps those who can afford it can get one and so on, but not generally. So we're saying that as part of the parent legislation, to deliver upon the goal of the Act, you have to have multidisciplinary teams in situ, accessible to a cluster of schools on an ongoing, as required basis. Not can I make an appointment for 4 months on Friday. It has to be available and accessible so that the children can be constantly supported in their growth and in integration and so on. But that requires manpower and that requires specific resources. And then finally, G, that provision shall be made for early intervention classes in schools to facilitate integration of each child with special educational needs. This is driven, I think, by, in fairness, the experience in Tullydonnell and Anne-Marie and so on, that if you maximise access to early intervention for children with special educational needs, you can begin the preparation of those for integration into mainstream class, into mainstream schools. And they should be much more accessible, and the torture that parents have to go through now when they've had a diagnosis to say, as I think Aveen said and Paul said, what's the next step? What do I do? Because you always have to remember, when parents get that diagnosis, right? They have to get into the car and drive home with their heads swimming as to what does this mean, where's the road going to be, where's the support going to come from, and so on. And that, rearing children is hard enough without having all of those, as you know only too well. So early intervention classes and ready access to them should be a right, not something one has to beg for, or grovel for, or apologise for looking for, but an absolute right. So what we're trying to suggest in this text is legislation in the Parent Act which would leave it less open to wriggle room for the administration or the bureaucracy or government ministers or whoever to minimise the supports instead of maximising them. And by the way, delivery of this will not be an evolution, it will be a revolution. But it's a revolution that every citizen of this state is entitled to have. And our children and your children are entitled to it just the same as anybody else. So what we're asking for is that, when you go away and you absorb all that you're hearing tonight about the shortcomings of the Act, the journey the school had to travel, your personal journey, okay, what needs to happen? First of all, we need to make a submission under the review, and in making that submission, we're asking that if you see fit, you would include this as possible text. And if we get hundreds, thousands of people suggesting this text or something like it, it makes it far more difficult in a few months' time for the permanent government in form of civil servants and or the elected government in form of ministers to say, no, we won't change the Parent Act. Right? Sing loud, sing continuously, and sing consistently, and we can change the system. And then watch our children, your children, grow, prosper, and integrate, and then we all benefit. Because what happens to the least of our children, the sickest or whatever, in a proper society, we all benefit from it. It's a social good, and they're entitled to mainstream education with support, and that's what this text will deliver. So please, give it serious consideration. You can make amendments, you can make additions. We're simply saying these are areas that we think this language, this text, would make it more specific, and we ask you to include it in your submissions. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah. Liam, thanks a million. As always, a wonderful speaker, Liam Doran. Unfortunately, Paul Savage is not able to make it tonight. Something's after cropping up for him. But I suppose I'm not going to go into what Paul was going to say, but I did have a conversation with him yesterday, and I'm just going to give you one little snippet of his experience in secondary school from the perspective of the principal trying to manage resources for children in an AS class in secondary school. So when you look at the inclusion model in secondary school, Paul said to me, Anne-Marie, he said, we try to include, and there are children in the AS class who may have an interest in maths or might have an interest in geography. And you've 6 children in that class, you've got 2 SNAs, and you've got a teacher. And he said, I can't really let those children off in different directions in a very big school like the Christian Brothers School in Drogheda, unaccompanied or without support. So he said, if I've got 2 students at the one time, one in a maths class over here in F1, one in a maths class over here, or a geography class over here in B4, I've got 2 SNAs, one going this direction, one going this direction, in 2 parts of the school, and the class teacher is left in that class with 4 students, maybe 16-year-old boys, or 14, 16, whatever age they are, on their own, trying to manage that situation. That's not workable. That won't work at secondary school level. So the supports are needed in the mainstream in order for children in AS classes to integrate in as well. And we're not just tonight talking about children with autism, we're talking about children with Down syndrome. We're talking about children with ADHD. We're talking about children with any sort of additional need, whether it be medical, whatever the need is. All children need to have equal access and have an equal right to education, and we need to make that happen. Now, Liam has referred there to the amendment to the Act. There's a lot of writing and there's a lot of work in that. For those of you who would like to use that language and would help, you would feel it would be beneficial, that booklet with the Act on the back of it has been put up on the Facebook page for Tullydonnell. So if you want to, you can copy and paste any information you want if it's of help to you in your submission. The link for the submission for the portal is there also. So you can click on the link, copy and paste, and in it goes if that's of benefit to you. The other thing I just ask you to do, if you don't mind tonight, and thank you all of you for coming out. It's lovely to see a big crowd out here tonight. We had a few technical difficulties, unfortunately, with the streaming for those people who wanted to link in online. So if I could ask you to help us out by sharing tonight's meeting. It'll go up now in the next hour or so, won't it, Joe? It'll go up in the next hour or so on that link. And if you could share that link on any platform that you can to get this message out, and the link for the submission and the link for the booklet, so that people, and just share the message, because as Liam said, this is the one opportunity now. And as Liam said, if the people that the powers that be hear nothing back, they'll think, oh, we're happy enough with the status quo the way things are, and nothing will change. But the more submissions they get that are the same information coming in, the greater the likelihood of us seeing change happen. So Tullydonnell Facebook will have all the information on it, and share, and Twitter, and as they laugh at me in school when I talk about the Facebook, but whatever way you can of getting the message out, please do, because it's the only way that we're going to orchestrate change here this evening. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight, and we hope tonight has been informative for you, and we hope we can all together make a difference in the best interest of all children in Ireland. Yes. Oh, what is a Facebook? Is Kelly there? Niamh, come in. I'll get one of the young teachers to tell you. Now, Niamh, this is Niamh Mitchell, one of our teachers in our AS class in early intervention in Tullydonnell.
What's Facebook?
This lady wants to know, what is the Facebook page?
It's just Tullydonnell School. So if you type in Tullydonnell School, is that okay?
Yeah, I think you type into Google, Niamh, Tullydonnell Facebook page.
No, you just go, if you have a Facebook account and you just go into Facebook to search it, if you're searching for a friend, just type in Tullydonnell School.
Tullydonnell School.
And you just, and join the group.
Join the group. Okie dokes. Is there any questions? Yes, at the back.
You might have said this. When did the submissions close?
The 3rd of March. It's funny, it's the 3rd of March, the date for submission is closed. No, we didn't mention it actually, and that's a good question. The 3rd of March is the date it closes. Yes?
I have 100 questions, but none right now. But I just want to say that I think I'm really overwhelmed.
Of course.
Above you all.
I'll come down with the microphone for you. Hang on. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank the panel. We only found out about this through friends very recently, and we would have missed it entirely. So I just want to say I'm incredibly grateful, and I'm in awe of all of you for putting this together, because you're right. Consultations, I work in HR, consultations exist sometimes just to tick a box so people can all move on. So thank you very much. Just wanted to say.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. Are there any more questions or... Yes, yes. Yeah.
Sorry. Hi, I just wanted to echo what that lady just said there. My son is 23, so I've been in this game probably longer than some of you have been alive. And you may not realise that education actually has made huge steps forward, strides forward, running forward in the last 30 years. Now, that's not saying there's not a hell of a lot more to do, but the reason that those changes have come about is because of parent groups like this in hotel meeting rooms all over the country, lobbying and putting their spoke in and sending in their submissions, and they do not have to be legalese, they do not have to be civil services. You can just put in, you do the online questionnaire or put in your submission, but it's really important that you do put it in by the 3rd of March.
3rd of March.
Yeah, I'd really, so it's great to see everyone here.
I should have worn the flats.
Thanks very much, and thanks to all the speakers. I've heard a particular word said a lot that is the first and possibly biggest struggle for parents: diagnosis. Right? Now, I have 2 sons that are autistic, and the younger has much more complex needs. He was born just before the pandemic, and I think parents with children that are now currently starting their first year of preschool or that kind of age will be familiar with the fact that developmental checks never happened. And so there is a large cohort of children that are struggling more than ever before to access diagnosis. Now, just because I'm a bear of a mammy, I've been through the whole process up to, we're now in CDNT, and it's like bouncing here and there, and there's whole things changing about the diagnostic process. But it seems that a lot of this particular legislative policy is very much hinged on diagnosis. Now, I've been lucky enough that I was able to know about and learn a lot about from early years educators that I've worked with over the years about the access and inclusion model in preschools. And that doesn't rely on diagnosis. And it makes it much more accessible to get some support. It makes it much more possible for education providers to get training. And it's not categorising children into boxes that we can't get access to. We can't even get access to boxes. I'm not dreading the day where I get an official diagnosis. I am praying for the day I get my official diagnosis, because I've known since my child was 18 months that he had autistic traits. And as he's gone on and started banging his heads off of walls and injuring himself because of his sensory seeking, and as he's still not talking to me or looking me in the eye, I know exactly what's wrong with my child. I know exactly what support he needs, but diagnosis is not available. And it's not going to be available by the time he needs to be in primary schools. And I think there's a lot of parents across the country in exactly that position. So I think what I'm wondering is how pivotal do you, as primary level education providers, see diagnosis as being? How important is that to your vision for the process going forward? Because it is the first and greatest struggle, I think. Thanks.
I asked the submissions question, the date, and it made me think that's pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to suggest that maybe, I know a journalist that I just thought straight away I need to contact that journalist. She's an autism mum, and if people know that kind of level of reach, to maybe get in touch with you, or to, this is a really important. I mean, I'm the same. I didn't know what I was coming to really here tonight, and now I do.
Yeah.
I mean, the 3rd of March to parents of autistic kids, this is like really important. So, that's it. It's like PR. Is there somebody in PR? This needs press releasing. It needs a load of noise to be made.
I'm in politics.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I suppose, as I said, myself and Aveen, we went to the Shannon on the 16th. We went to the Shannon in November. On the 16th of November, we sent an email to Martina Mannion in the Department of Education to say that we had been up with Micheál Carrigy and that we had a 5-year plan in place, and that we were really concerned that while the fight worked for our school, that there are other children all over the country who are experiencing similar problems. And we sent that on the 16th of November, Aveen. On the 30th of November, the EPSEN Act review came out online on the Department of Education website. And schools around, all the primary schools and secondary schools around the country will have got a link to say, you know, there's a portal here and, you know, this is happening. And schools will have sent out emails. But I think sometimes, you know, you can get an email in and if it doesn't make sense to you or if it's not explained, you're going to look at it and go, oh, yeah, that's probably not to do with me because everybody's so busy. So myself and Aveen and the PAG group and Liam and Seamus and Paula and a group of us, we all got together and we said, we need this. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. People need to know that this is happening. We need to have a public meeting and we need to sort that out. So then Christmas was upon us very quickly. The regular nativity had to take priority. And so we said, we'll get it as soon as we can after Christmas. We'll get Dunnigan's booked. And Joe then was going on holidays. And it's the operation of trying to get everybody together. But there has been, I mean, I tried my best in terms of, we were on News Talk, we were on the RTE app there. There has been a little bit, but possibly not enough for people to understand, which is why we called the meeting. So the more we can get this out there, the better. So you have a very good point.
The other thing, I'll just say it on the mic as well. The other thing that can happen is dates can be extended.
Yes.
And that could be something to push for. I've had that done on other things in the past. It happens all the time. Because people need more time to.
Absolutely.
So that could be something to be looked at as well.
Absolutely. Super.
I suppose I'm very overwhelmed myself. I worked in childcare for over 20 years and it came to my door only in the last few years. My eldest is 14 and it has been diagnosed with dyspraxia, sensory processing difficulties, also social communication disorder. So it's all very new and when it comes to your own door it's quite difficult as a mammy and as a childcare worker. But I've had my struggles myself. She's in secondary school now at the minute and every door I've gone to I've had it knocked in my face. Unfortunately the school's not working. I won't name the school, but I won't give up. There's a lot of false pretenses, saying I'll do this and I'll do that, and it doesn't happen. But I'll fight to the end, and please God, things will happen, but it's very hard. I know the resources aren't there, but when you're given false hope, and the child is asking for help, and she doesn't get help.
This is your opportunity now. You write that down and you let the powers that be know that your struggle, you're not getting the help you need and it's not good enough for your child.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else there? Yeah.
Thanks for everything for tonight. I think the main thing for me is the short notice period, and that chap mentioned it as well. I'm a mother of an autistic child, non-verbal, developmental delays, the usual kind of package that comes along with that. But I didn't have a clue really about this. I got an email via my other son's school, actually, in Tenure. But fair play to the parents' counsellor. But sorry, so I don't think a lot of people know about this, to be honest. And it's not just about people with children who are autistic. It's about people who have neurotypical children as well, and they can put submissions in. Like, that's fantastic to see a lot of people here who have children with special needs and additional needs, but we need to talk to our friends, we need to get the word out more, we need more call to action. I know you mentioned about PR, I work in advertising, we can offer advertising displays, FOC, but we need to have a chat with me later on. But if you want to get the message out there to a wider audience, give me a shout, because there's not much time to, obviously, to get to the 3rd of March, so that's really it. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to try and put something a little bit positive out there, because I'm just conscious that a lot of the mammies and daddies and that are quite, maybe have youngish children. And I have 4 kids with additional needs. And we are very, very lucky with the schools we've had in Tenure Primary School, and the other ones are in another secondary school. But they have all had fantastic support in school, which has been a combination of luck, very, very hard work on behalf of the school, and hard work as us parents. But my eldest is 19 now. He's had an SNA the entire way through primary school and secondary school, and he is in his first year at university without support. Like, he's in DCU, which is Ireland's first autism-friendly campus, which is fantastic. But he's coping so much better than I ever thought he could. And I know the day we got the diagnosis, I know that feeling, and your pit of your stomach, and like, this is the end of everything that I thought we were going to have. And to see him coming out the other side of it and getting on the bus and going to university and sorting out his own stuff, and like, no, I can do it myself. You know, I just wanted to put that out there for parents, that with the right inputs and the right support, they can come through the other side and have that life that you want for them.
That's exactly it. And as Aileen points out, that's you know, when you start on a journey like that, you're thinking, my God, what is to be? But this is what we're looking for: the opportunities for the child to come and reach their potential and be the very best that they can be. And there is the reality in that family. So it can happen. But as you said, he had the support from primary school the whole way through to secondary school. And now he has flown the nest into university, and he's doing it on his own. So that's wonderful. And congratulations. Yeah. I definitely needed my trainers, Kimmy.
Thanks very much. I just want to congratulate yourselves on your success, and just to acknowledge the mammies in the room, because it's the mammies. I obviously am a daddy, but and I apologise to any of the great daddies, but I'm one of the useless ones that mammy does all the. I'm here, yeah, dragged, to be honest, but no, the mammies do it all. You know, it's mammies behind, and the schools. You know, we are very lucky. I won't mention the principal, Fiacre, there, you know what I mean? The same story. Dylan was diagnosed, and he had difficulties, and Fiacre stepped in and helped him out, and he got the help the whole way through secondary school. And as everyone has said, you had to fight for it. You know, we've Chloe there, and she is gone to St. Ita's. And of course we had tears there because we weren't sure, was she going to benefit from mainstream, and all the difficulties you've acknowledged. But I suppose really, one, I'm really delighted that you've brought it out, because most people feel on their own on this journey. I have to be honest, and certainly back in Dylan's time, that's how you felt. And then you had teachers who come in direct contact. So you've brought it out to the public, and for that I thank you all here tonight. You know, it's a very difficult area, and as I said, in particular for the mammies. The daddies don't know much about it, but you know, I did have to put on a suit, walk around the Lourdes Hospital and grab somebody with a major qualification that I don't have, because we had hit some sort of problem that I don't remember, but he needed some bit of paper in order to progress, but he couldn't progress because he hadn't got the bit of paper. He'd fallen through the cracks. Now, that's the kind of stuff you're talking about. That's the kind of stuff you're talking about putting into legislation. And I suppose the wording of it is really for the legislators to frame, but you know, certainly it's going the right way about it, and congratulations to you all, and of course the mammies, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
I suppose I'm just looking for advice, because there's a wealth of knowledge that have come before us in this room. Our daughter is severely dyslexic. She's in the lowest 4 percentile in the country. She generally hasn't really got a clue what's going on around her in school every single day. It's It's very painful to get her into school. She's exhausted when she comes home from school. And she is being failed. She is not getting the supports that she needs. And it's breaking my heart. It's breaking my husband's heart. I was failed my whole life through primary and secondary, and now history is repeating itself again. It was suggested by the lovely Dr. Avin up the front a couple of weeks ago that there's a chance that Charlie may be on the autistic spectrum to some degree. And when it was pointed out to me, it was as plain as the nose on my face. And I felt like the stupidest parent in the history of ever, right? Because I'm not backwards and coming forwards. So, having said that, I've made a million gazillion phone calls to try and get her a diagnosis. She is going to be sitting her junior cert this year. I'm going to force her to do TY, if that's happening, because we need to buy a bit of time. And my fear is for her that she won't have her diagnosis in time for her junior cert, it's only up the road, and that she won't have it for her leaving cert, and that she will not reach her potential. That's my fear. Because this girl is super bright in all of the other ways she would buy and sell any of us, right? And I want her to be able to fill her boots so that she needs bigger boots. So I just want to know, is there like a secret code that you need to get if some psychologist to just assess her? Like, where do I go? What do I do? I can't actually even get her on a waiting list. Like, I told them I'd sell me granny. But like, it's not happening. So what do I do? Where do I go? People just tell me what to do. Thank you. And I'm going to help you as well to get the word out.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I have a wee boy, he's just gone 3. And like people are on about the diagnosis, it's heart, soul, but it's not even that, it's that we can't pick our school. We just have to, the unit, whatever's available. Do you know, and I'm close to Darver, and I'm originally from Darver. And my dream was to send my kids to Darver where I went to school. And I can't do that because there's no unit in Darver. And I know that he needs a unit because he has no words, you know. And then the question is then, because I have a wee daughter, she's 2 in March, and she has no additional needs, and I want to send her to Darver. And then I have Tommy maybe go to Dundalk, tow her wherever, like, do you know. So I'm always kind of going, like you say, like if we integrate it into mainstream and those half days to start with, to introduce it. If I'm working, because I'm not at the minute, how does he get from his ASD class to mainstream if he's in Dundalk and I want him to go to Darver? What way does that work?
Yeah, so like, you can't have them in 2 different schools. Like,
No.
They would have to be on the campus. The AS class work great when they're on the campus and you can integrate that way.
Yeah.
But you can't be in an ASD class in one, because the enrolment policy is such that you're enrolled into one school.
Yeah.
You can't be enrolled in 2 schools at the same time.
Okay.
Okay, if you want to have a chat with me though afterwards,
Yeah.
I'll have a chat with you.
Okay.
Or even if I'll give you the number of the school and you can contact me and we can have a chat either. Is that okay?
Thanks very much.
Very quickly, I just want to say thanks so much. I think you're an absolute inspiration as a principal of a school. I am in a school that's not too far from you, and I'm having the complete opposite experience, which is absolutely horrendous. I'm a widow, single parent, little boy, and it's been my experience so far has been horrendous. Need to start in September. So I just want to say I'd love to clone you. I'd get you to go national. It'd be great. And I just want to say thanks to all the speakers, particularly Aveen. She's a good friend of mine. He's all spoke really well, and I think you're amazing. I just wanted to let you know you are amazing and well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to also thank you for for just being so honest and upfront about how things actually are. So my little boy was diagnosed with autism during last summer. He's 4, so we are kind of at the the start of this journey. And like that, the diagnosis was that he goes into a unit, and I fundamentally disagree with it. So I've had to push to get him an additional year of Montessori, which we have, which was pretty hard to get because as per legislation, when they turn 6, they're meant to be in mainstream or be in school. So I just want to thank you for being an advocate for this. And the question really I want to ask is around communication for this, which is kind of key, and we've all raised it. Why is it that you are kind of the person behind this? We haven't heard it, we're not from here, from our own school, or is there an understanding among the primary schools nationally that they will be able to give parents this knowledge, because it's not known. So I'm just wondering, why is it this school? Is it you? Or is it, like colonial, I think is the term. But I just want to understand around communication. And I mean, I've seen it on RTE, but why haven't we heard about this through our own schools? Is there an understanding among the primary national schools that how important this is, not just for, people who are neurodivergent, but for neurotypical children? That's my question.
I think maybe Anne, I see Anne here, and Fiacra, and us as principals, it's a job, isn't it? There was an article there one of our colleagues, Brian, put up recently on the WhatsApp group. What was it, Anne? Is principalship? What was it? A role for the CEO? You're literally, as a principal of a school, you're in the toilets 1 minute sorting out that all the toilet system is clogged, and then the ultraviolet light isn't working in the pump house, and so the water is at risk, and so we need to check that out. And then somebody's having an issue with a friendship group down here, and the curriculum needs to be taught, and NCSE and Board of Management, and it's all going on all at the same time, and there's a leak down in the computer room, and the water's coming down on the computers, and we've learned, I suppose, and maybe I'm a bit of a rebellious principal. Anybody who knows me and who went to school with me can't believe I'm actually in the role I'm in. Is she in that job? But maybe there's a bit of rebellion in me. It's very hard. You're worn down in this job. You fight, and you get nowhere a lot of the time. And I think that's the experience a lot of us have. But I'm not prepared to take no for an answer. And when it comes to vulnerable people, when it comes to the young, those with additional needs, and the elderly, those are the groups in my head that come to mind first. I fight, because there's nobody else to fight for them. And that's up to us to do that job. And it's up to us to put in a submission. We have to. If you take nothing else from tonight, please write something down and put it in. That's what I would say. That lady down here said, it's sometimes these things go under the radar because people are quite happy for them to go under the radar.
That's right. I feel like it's going under the radar everywhere apart from in your location. Are those the principals that are here, they all from your location? Same
yes.
area?
Yes. Yeah.
We're not from here. We're from about 40 minutes away from here. The only reason we found out about this was a random article that came up on one of our Facebook pages. I think it was the article that was on RTE.
Yes.
And totally randomly, I sent it to Carrie, and we came up tonight. I don't think so. Do all principals in the country know about this?
An email was sent to all principals in the country about this. Yeah. But again, I suppose just from the point of view of our colleagues, it is so. We are the reason why, I suppose, it's very hard to react against these things or to engage in these things is because there's so much being thrown at schools all the time. So those emails may have gone out from those schools around the country, but parents may not, because there was no maybe scaffolding around it to explain or to say what this is about, or the importance of it, or the that it's legislation and we can possibly change legislation. It may go under the radar, but I suppose We had a particular experience last year. We had an assumption that you know, in my naive mind, thinking everybody would always look after us, I had an assumption. We opened 4 classes of early intervention. We got all the resources we needed for that. When it came to the inclusion piece of bringing those children into mainstream, when they were able to come into mainstream, we were given nothing. We were told we didn't need anything. We were told, actually, Anne-Marie, no, you have enough there. And you need, I was actually told, I'll tell you what I was told, because I went to, Josepha Madigan sent me to a meeting in NCSE. And when I went to the meeting, do you know what I was told? Anne-Marie, you have enough resources, but do you know what we can offer you? We can offer you a seminar to help you work out how to use that 1.5 SNA more effectively in your school. Because you don't know how to do it. Now, there was nearly blood coming down the side of my chin. But that's what I was told. You know, the problem wasn't that I didn't have enough SNA resources. The problem was I didn't know how to utilise them properly. And this is what all principals are getting. So we're constantly fighting. But, you know, the only way, they won't listen to us. They will not listen to us. They will listen to you as parents. You have the voice. You have the power. You have the power. This man wants to speak. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Sorry, Annie, I just wanted to ask, like, outside of the consultation, do you think it's worth, like, lobbying our local councillors, lobbying our local TDs, asking them where they stand on the EPSEN Act, what are they doing on it? If they're knocking at your door next election time, what did you do? What did you vote for it or not?
Absolutely.
And, you know, you can find your email addresses for all your local councillors on Louth County Council website. On gov.ie you can find the email addresses for your TDs. I would say to anybody in the room, email your TD, ask them what they are doing. Email your councillors and ask them what their political parties are doing on this, because
it's
the consultation, obviously they want to sweep it under the rug or not advertise it or not promote people giving their opinions. If you give it to them straight in an email that's documented, a record that they received it, they have to do something about it.
And I completely agree with you, but your homework first is to put in your own submission.
Sorry, I know it's been a long evening, but just to echo about the support, we would certainly support all of you engaging with your public reps, your county councillors, your TDs, your senators, anyone and everyone. But please understand, when you engage with them, I'm not insulting any of them, but don't assume they know anything about the issue you're bringing to their door. In fairness, they're supposed to know the answer to everything, whether it's the septic tank's blocked or why can't you get lighting on the road or why can't... In fairness, they're just like us. So when you go to them, use the material you're getting from tonight's meeting and any other material you feel relevant and present that to them. We're not asking you what you're doing, we're now telling you what you have to do. And here's the text. Keep it simple, right? A, B, C, D. Now get on with it. And by the way, what you do will depend upon my vote the next time round. Okay? So
we employ them.
Yeah.
They're our employees.
Don't worry about the threat, lads. I mean, that's what works. Do you understand me? He who shouts loudest gets most. But I'm saying the obvious thing, but don't assume that they know what your struggle is or what we're seeking or whatever. They'll pretend they do, but they don't. So make it very simple for them by giving them the documentation, give them the change text for the new parent legislation. Make it simple so that they have no reason not to do it, and then follow them up a week later saying, what have you done? Keep the pressure on.
Thanks a million, Liam. I'm just going to reiterate again, this man, Miles' daddy, can't remember your, Peter, has just asked me again, is this piece of amendment of the legislation anywhere where it can be got to be copied and pasted? Yes, it will be online on that Facebook page, Tully Donnell Facebook. And we've put it there because, you know, we've been kind of working very quickly on this to try, because there's been such a short time frame to get the information out, that we're kind of alongside school and all the other things that are going on, we're trying to get everything done. But it will be on the Facebook page. if you need to copy and paste along with the rest of that book, and hopefully that'll be helpful. Just go to this lady and then over here. There's tea and coffee, by the way, afterwards, if anyone is still awake for it.
I'm like that woman over in the far corner. I came from Monaghan, and I only got word of this through my son is in a unit, and he can't even access a full day in school. So he has to go to an early intervention centre, and he's 9 years old. And it was the provider there that told me about this meeting. I sent the link on to members of my SNAP group, the Special Needs for Active Parents group. They didn't hear anything about it. Up in North Monaghan, we have the Ergo True Special Needs Parents group. No one knew anything about this. Our principal hasn't said anything out of any of the units. I've reached out to all the mothers. No one has heard about this at all. I just talked to these two girls here. Is there any way possible, rather than going through your school, because with everything going on, I wouldn't remember the name of the school. Could anyone set up a Facebook page just for this?
Absolutely. I'm sure these girls would be great at doing
and
that.
But even if, just simple.
I'm volunteering them, because I know their work.
But even if you just put a mission statement out, yes. What this is about, we all have friends. Yeah. We all have people in the education system around lengths and breadths of this country. And I think it's really important if we could even just have one, like a Twitter page and a Facebook page, and we just share the hell out of it.
And what will we call it so everybody knows? EPSEN Act Review. EPSEN Act Review.
But it's for children with special needs.
Yeah.
And if we have that, honestly, I think, because I won't remember.
No problem.
I think, though, just to share the message, while we're saying pupils with additional needs, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All children. Everybody. All children.
I have a friend of mine whose girl goes to up in Carrick Cross, up in the Down Syndrome Centre. They didn't know anything about this. They can't get their child into a school, into the special school beside them, who's peg-fed. They can't get the help because NCSE is knocking them down. And NCSE is...
Actually, I think the NCSE have a role to play in disseminating this information across the board. Yeah.
Well, excuse my language, but what they said to you, they could shove it up their hole, I swear to God, because I'm shower of wankers. On it? No, but what kills me is you have people in there who have no idea who our children are, who are making decisions for them. I had a screaming match, and I took my child out in front of our CNO, and I said, this is who you're making decisions about. This is my son. And you are making decisions that are altering their lives.
I know. Thank you for that. Thank you. Sorry, get into you now.
Hi, I was going to say something really quickly. My little boy, Shay, was one of the group who didn't get the SNA last year. We went to Tullydonald. Shay has autism. And we sat here last November thinking, we're never going to get anywhere. What are we going to do? We all stood up there. Everyone got up. And Emmett got up, because I can't really talk, but he got up and said, and we went from there to meetings, and we went to the protest outside Leinster House, lashed rain on top of us. And it proved that when we all get together and we all are on the same sheet, saying the same thing, we get it. And we got it in the end. It took us a year, but we got it. And my little boy now, he's 7, he's in senior infants, and he got up and did his first play. He says hello. Bernadette, his SNA here, got a hug off him, which he never would do. And he's come on, he was in the ASD unit there in Tullydonald, and he was with Stephen, Bernie, Linda, he was with Nicholas and Olive on the buses. And when everyone came together, everything went in for him. And he's got 2 brilliant teachers down there, Miss Doran and Miss Clare. And I just want to say, yes, it's really hard. And there's times I sat at home crying, because I also have a little girl who has Down syndrome, and I was like, what are we going to do? If we come out and stand together and write out and down, we'll get it. I'm not a social person or a social media person, and when this came out, I was like, God, that's the only other group I'm on is Down syndrome led Mead, and I sent it on to Brendan, And I think you even sent the wrong link, it wasn't that great. But we got people out here as well. So I just want to say, yes, like it's hard and it seems like this big job, but when we all get out together, and they can't ignore us. They can't ignore us. And just a big thank you to everyone in Tully. Thanks.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks very much, Renee.
I just want to say, I'm an SNA and I'm not in Tunnydonald with Armory and them, but I want to congratulate her on everything they have done fighting for our children with special needs. Our school doesn't have a unit. Our principal's here tonight, we're down the road as well. But as an SNA, children who are in mainstream, we see what they can do. We see how they thrive. Their struggles some days, as the doctor has said above, at home, and we have it in school as well. But they really do. They flourish, absolutely flourish. When the support is there for them. And I know principals are fighting tooth and nail to get supports, get SNAs in place. And there are many children coming in, like looking at next September and the following September, who are ASD children who do brilliant in the unit, but would even do better, in the mainstream. And the whole thing, that's what this EPSEN Act, we've already looked at it in school as SNAs, is to, and we have to fight tooth and nail, like every parent, as parents, you are all here, that's what you have to do. But if the support is in the school and your children are there, they will thrive. It's fantastic, and that's what you're here tonight. Thanks to Armory pushing for things like this, and as some of these ladies have said, get it out there too, wider field for everybody. But like the children love it. They love being with their colleagues, and we seen at Christmas this year one of our ASD children getting up and singing in front of the whole school, and that wouldn't have happened, And there's tears everywhere. But just like, do go online, do make the changes, and do contact your local representatives and that, and fight, because it's the only way you can do it. So, thank you.
That's super. Well, I think, time is pushing on, and we'll possibly wrap it up there now. Anybody who needs any further information, or if I can help in any way, you're very welcome to contact me at school, or you can talk to me here afterwards. There's tea and coffee provided there. And I'd just like to, before we finish up, thank Joe for doing the videoing, thank all our panel members, and thank Dunnigans for the venue tonight. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming. Thank you.